Several legislators had been critical of Governor Smith for calling a special session just at this time. Thus, when the governor entered the House chamber, he got what sounded like polite applause. But he got immediately to his speech, outlining reasons why he wanted legislators to consider powers of the governor and insurance reform.
I urge you to untie the hands of the next legislature and give it the authority to require the approval of the governor prior to the expenditure of appropriated funds for certain purposes and under certain conditions. I say to you that supervision, control, and direction should be vested to the governor by statute. I am asking this so that the next governor of Texas and all future governors will not be powerless to act when action is necessary. Rate making and price fixing in the Texas manner does not work in the best interest of the consumer. It has inherent disadvantages and inadequacies and distracts attention from such real consumer concerns as the availability of coverage, discrimination, and cancellation.
Governor Smith ended his talk at 11:30. Before noon, 2 insurance bills had been introduced in each chamber. Lieutenant Governor Ben Barnes says he'll have a new committee on economic development appointed under new Senate rules by this evening, and he told me the chairman would be Senator H.J. Blanchard of Lubbock. He was chairman of the old insurance committee. Both houses have adjourned until Wednesday morning. Phil Reynolds, Channel 8 News on the Move, in Austin.
Maybe I can explain this best by giving an illustration that is familiar to everyone. If you go in to have your automobile repaired and they tell you it's so much money, and then after tearing the automobile down, then they tell you, no, we made a mistake, it will be so much more money, and you do not want it repaired, then under this ordinance they'd be required to give your automobile back to you in the shape in which you brought it in, rather than tearing it down and then charging a different fee. Well, in that event, we would continue the austerity program that we followed in the last 18 months. That is, to the fullest possible extent, reduce expenditure through failing or refusing to fill positions in the city government when they go vacant.
This is something I feel so strongly that I want to share with people this message that I have, one of scientific discovery and a religious awakening in my life. And really the message I have is really the old story, you know, of Jesus Christ, of God, how much He loved this earth, an earth that we saw from a new perspective. But to appreciate the earth, to understand really for the first time in my life how much God loved this earth and the people on it, to send His Son, Jesus Christ, to us.
The outlook for tomorrow's Democrat state convention here in Houston is coming into focus. Gubernatorial nominee Dolph Briscoe has been appealing in numerous private meetings as well as in public statements today for harmony to prevail because he feels like apparently he represents the majority of Texas voters.
The platform will be presented to the platform committee tomorrow when the committee meets. I think it's a platform, but I think it will be a platform that will be one that will meet the mainstream of Democratic thinking and Texas thinking. I think it's one that certainly we can be proud of.
The real key to conducting convention business harmoniously is the attitude of the Wallace delegates. And that was pretty well spelled out in the caucus this afternoon. First, Wallace brother-in-law Alton Dauphin spoke and said that Wallace will be running for president again in 1976 as a Democrat. Then Hall Tomanus, Wallace chairman in Texas, went down the list of convention business for tomorrow, indicating cooperation with Briscoe, because that also serves plans of the Wallaceites to reform the Democratic Party as they wish. Another Wallace leader, Dr. M.E. Bradford of Dallas, agrees that harmony should prevail.
Yes, on the selection of convention officers and leaders of the State Democratic Executive Committee.
The platform?
Platform, yes, I believe so. It's necessary for them to do this, and it's necessary for us to do this. It's realpolitik. No.
Then you think that things may move along fairly smoothly in the convention?
I think it will be an expeditious convention. There'll be a little noise and hoopla, and the McGovern people will do what they can to encourage their nominee and do what they can to get the party more and more closely aligned with him.
The McGovern delegates will probably put up some fights in the convention tomorrow, but they seem to have little chance of winning them. This is Roger McDonald, Channel 8 News on the Move in Houston.
The Republican State Convention is tomorrow in Dallas, but delegates have been here since Saturday working out three major problems. One would be a platform, two is rules, and three is election of candidates. But the Republicans say they have no problems. After this morning's Executive Committee meeting, I asked State Chairman Dr. George Williford if he could put one word to this convention.
Well, I think the one theme was, if you could say one thing, was unity of the party, and to get out and do our job in our efforts to help our candidates beat Democrats.
This entire election year, sir, we've heard nothing but unity, quote unquote, out of the Republican Party. Don't you people argue about anything?
Well, yeah, I think your argument is pretty much like families. You ought to do it at home, and then when you get out, you want to back everyone up.
So the Republicans in Texas are expected to bring it all together here tomorrow. During the convention, of course, will be the committee reports. Feature will be Senator John Tower seeking re-election, gubernatorial candidate Henry Grover, and a keynote address by the Honorable Winfield Dunn, the governor of Tennessee. They're so unified, there's a rumor they'll all order the same thing for lunch. At the Dallas Convention Arena, this is Jim Mitchell, Channel 8 News on the Move.
In truth, the Tarrant County Human Relations Commission is very close to non-existent. It has members, but it has no staff, no budget, no facilities. So, Commission Chairman Randolph Clark went to the City Human Relations Commission. They agreed to investigate the charge of racial discrimination at Lena Pope home. This morning, Chairman Clark quoted from that report and said there was no sign of racial discrimination at Lena Pope. On the matter of the firing of John Burton, Clark said it was an administrative difference with no bearing on the subject of race. Then Burton took the floor and presented a long line of witnesses, including Mrs. Lena Pope herself. Mrs. Pope is now 92. It was implied she might be failing mentally, but her command of the English language and the forthright and reasoned way she spoke left little doubt that she knew exactly what she was talking about. And she talked about things like, quote, the administration has taken from the hands of the original founders the operation of the home and placed it in the hands of people who don't understand children. Mrs. Pope also said, I think it's an indictment of our Fort Worth people that it had to be a colored man, she was speaking of John Burton, who came to the rescue of these children. A former employee told of instances of children being forced into sexual alliances with other children. Another former employee told the court that in the planning of the operation of the home, quote, God was left out. A psychiatrist was supposed to solve our problems. One of the HRC members who investigated Burton's initial charge told me confidentially that he feels the basis of the problem is simply that, quote, in the old days, dormitory-style living was the way such a home was run, but you don't do things that way anymore. He said it's a matter of the future, slowly phasing out the past, and some of the people who lived in the past don't like it. I offered Lee Hacker, the director of the home, an opportunity to speak to the issues tonight. He deferred until after he has spoken with his board of directors. It now appears the Commissioner's Court itself may undertake to look into the situation, though some members of that court seem somehow reluctant to do it themselves. And the court will, in the future, apparently appoint 5 members to the already burdensome number of 40 members to the board of directors of the Lena Pope home. Jerry Taft, Channel 8 News on the Move, Fort Worth.
Well, we intend to next take it before the board, and if the board still does not intend to work with us and still feels that the school's within the right, then we have our home up for sale and we intend to move to Arlington, where they will release her and give us the help we need.
They have not had a successful experience in school. School has sort of turned them off. We haven't developed a program that meets their needs. Another major problem is, particularly for teenagers, where the mother and father both work, they're used as babysitters in the home. We need to identify these areas, these students, and find ways to provide daycare for younger brothers and sisters so that they can attend school. There are a host of reasons. Some of them related to health and welfare, others relating to educational programs.
we can expect more of his demagoguery and personal attacks and phony promises. But I have no intention of getting down in the gutter with him. Instead, I intend to continue discussing the issues.
We Tennesseans challenge you Texans to join us in producing the greatest victory for government, for republicanism, and for America in our history by re-electing our president and Republican candidates across the face of our nation. Thank you very much.
Elected governor, Hank Grover, needs unity, but he also needs money. $1.5 million to be exact in order to get his campaign off the ground. But his big hurdle now is how to convince those would-be contributors that he has any chance of beating Democrat Dolph Briscoe. Martha McIntyre, Channel 8 News on the Move at the State Republican Convention in Dallas.
After the speeches, the convention bogged down for hours in caucus and committee meetings. In those caucuses, 1/4 of the members of the newly elected state committee are Wallaceites. There also are some McGovern delegates elected. In Dallas County, Chairman Earl Luna lost some of his strength, but still has basic control of the party. One Dallas district, number 16, had a shouting match with Al Lipscomb in the middle of it. It had to be controlled by sergeant of arms and sheriff's deputies. In Tarrant County, new committee men and women were elected in both senatorial districts. Former Senator Ralph Yarborough told me there's a definite liberal trend
Well, actually, we were very well pleased with the overall performance of our offensive line. We were very worried going into the ball game against Wake Forest on how well they could block against the large defensive linemen that Wake Forest had. They did an excellent job. We certainly felt like our overall defensive team played an excellent football game, but we've been looking very good in practice. We more or less anticipated this. I think Clint Hackney's ability to kick off in and out of the end zone and getting the ball extremely high on kickoffs was also very encouraging. But the running game, we anticipated Wayne Morris and Alvin Maxson to be outstanding because the good Lord blessed them with a lot of ability, and they utilized it. We were a little disappointed with Casey Ortez's throwing, and we were a little disappointed with the snaps from center on our field goal, extra point, and punt attempts. We certainly will dedicate ourselves this week to try to polish up that phase of the game.
Relative to Casey, he was 5 of 15. Do you have any idea what was going wrong?
Yes, a couple of things. One is that Casey wasn't getting completely set and throwing off of his back foot like he should have been in the ball game. He was drifting and throwing off balance on 5 or 6 of the passes that he threw. And Casey's an excellent passer. He'd been looking extremely good in practice. And the fact that he was just off target just a little bit high on most of the throws leads us to believe that this is a very minor adjustment he has to make to become a real fine passer.
Well, Coach Reynolds, he recruited me, and he just seemed to be a real fine individual. And the people, too, just the atmosphere of the town, it's just real pleasant. And my brother's here, but, you know, I wasn't going to let that interfere. But it is mainly the people, the school, and just everything. It's real good.
Our party is aimed particularly at those conditions that oppress not only Chicanos, but everybody else, blacks and poor whites included, or students or women, or depending on how your particular viewpoint is or perspective is. We're going to try to reflect in our platform those issues very relevant, very important to the Chicano community. And those issues statewide are not much different than the issues affecting blacks or poor whites or women or students or any other kind of oppressed minority.
The wrecking yard in question is Bill's Auto Salvage in the 7900 block of North Skillman Avenue, an acre of junk cars stacked on top of each other. Property owners in the area have petitioned the Board of Adjustment to close the yard on the grounds it's an unhealthy nuisance which has delayed residential growth. But J.R. White, the owner of the wrecking yard for the past 12 years, doesn't see it that way. He contends his yard is not responsible for any of the claims made against it. In fact, White sees his business with an important role in today's car-oriented society by helping to get rid of the old worn-out vehicles which have become its byproduct. White says all he wants is to be left alone, to run what he feels is a legitimate business. And if the Board of Adjustment eventually rules against him, White wonders what he can go. Jack Hill, Channel 8 News on the Move.
Finished in time. Activity in, around, under, and on top of the structure is at a feverish pitch. Tile setters, carpet layers, seat installers, electricians, landscapers, and 100 other workers won't slow down. The deadline is fast approaching. To look at it now and visualize where it'll be in less than 2 weeks, you're really not sure. But those who have been closest to the project and have watched it grow say you can see improvement each hour of every day.
11 days from now at 6 o'clock on October the 1st, they'll move in the scenery for No Nanette. There's not a doubt in anybody's mind here that the new music hall will be ready. Even the overall contractor has a smile on his face. Jerry Park, Channel 8 News, on the move at the new State Fair Music Hall.
I've had a good deal of experience in government, and I think that my background, the experience that I have, places me in a pretty good position to make an independent judgment once I get there. And I intend to go over there, take a good look at the commission, see what problems there are, if any, and try to solve them once I get there.
You're not going to have the honest-to-goodness power if these insurance bills pass, are you, that you would once have had as insurance board member?
No, I don't think that you will, and I think maybe that might be a good thing that you don't have. I'd certainly say that competitive rates would be more comparable with our system of what we think's right or wrong in Texas than it would be to let 3 people over there on the board determine what should be charged and what shouldn't. I've always been in favor of competition.
The significance of this case is the growing power of the executive over citizens. These men were taken all the way from New York, where they have their homes and their families and their jobs, way down to Texas to appear before this grand jury. They've never been accused of anything, and they're simply here on civil contempt charges, which they're now appealing, claiming that they shouldn't be forced to testify.
I thought he said 20,000. And I was a little shocked by that amount, and the door said no, he said 100,000. Well, the first thing that went through my mind was that he had effectively denied them bail, both in violation of Justice Douglas's order and the 8th Amendment of the Constitution.
If confidence is contagious, Texas Republicans have exposed themselves today with a hefty dose. They're riding high on the popularity of Richard Nixon and U.S. Senator John Tower, and they hope to capture the State House as well. So no holes are barred in lambasting their Democratic opposition. Quiet as the convention hall boomed with cheers, Senator Tower later sniped at his opponent, Barefoot Sanders. While Texas Republicans speak of a Nixon landslide and a Tower victory, Senator Henry Grover's race for governor is called more of an uphill scramble. The convention hall went wild as Grover pleaded for unity among Republicans. Like all families, he said, we've had our quarrels, but that's over now.
The Democratic Party today in Texas is more unified than it's been in the last 20 years. We've seen an open convention where every legitimate point of view was heard, where the delegates were free to express their will, to elect their own committeemen and women, to write the kind of platform that they wanted the Democratic Party of Texas to run on. And I think that the Democratic Party is unified from top to bottom. I think it ensures the election of Dolph Briscoe as governor and Barefoot Sanders as United States Senator.
And so from this exercise, the Democrats go out into the campaign to try to retain the governor's office in the face of the most severe challenge ever from Republicans. This is Roger McDonald, Channel 8 News on the Move in Houston.
5 Irish-born New Yorkers found themselves in Abilene, Texas today in yet another chapter of the legal entanglement story of the Fort Worth Five. The men are suspected of, but not charged with, running guns to the Irish Republic Army. Supreme Court Justice Douglas ordered Judge Leo Brewster, now holding court in Abilene, to set bond on their civil contempt charges arising from their failure to testify before a federal grand jury in Fort Worth. Doris Peterson, attorney for the Five, explained the significance of the case. As they were leaving, the Fort Worth Five encouraged us to read a couple of pages from a book on Thomas Jefferson. The subject matter, Judicial Injustice. For Channel 8 News on the Move, this is Judy Hanna in Abilene.
The board met in closed session today, hearing no witnesses because, they say, they've heard the complaint so many times before. Lee Hacker, director of the home, told me this morning he was a bit disappointed in the behavior of the county commissioners yesterday. Out of $327,000 annual budget at the home, Hacker said, we get roughly $12,000 from Tarrant County. Yet they acted yesterday as if they were virtually our sole source of financial support. Hacker pointed out that when Tarrant County places a child at the home, it pays $50 per month for support. On the other hand, he said, we have some kids from Travis County, and they pay $150 per month. As to the commissioner's plan to add 5 new board members as personal contacts at the home, Hacker noted that the home has little choice but to say okay. What else can we do, he says. If we tell them no, it's going to sound mighty strange. And, of course, he continues, the home does want any opportunity for a closer liaison with any agency such as the Commissioner's Court. Jerry Taft, Channel 8 News on the Move, Fort Worth.
The study reflected that about 87% of the members of various boards are white. In general, the report also reflected that over 75% are in the age group between 40 and 60. And I suppose as a general statement, you could say that most of the boards are made up of white, middle-aged, and middle-class people.
On the northern section that was discussed today on the west side of the airport, there will be approximately 11 families, or about 28 people involved on the northern section. On the southern section, there will be approximately 6 families, about 18 people involved. And of course, these people will be offered the full relocation assistance.
How long will it be before this project will get underway, or do you have any idea?
Our best estimate would be that possibly right away could not be, or even begin to be secured until sometime in 1974.